Have you ever wondered why Iron Maiden's debut album was so successful? I mean, there were so many bands in the new wave of British heavy metal scene, but what was it about Iron Maiden that made them arguably the most successful of the bunch? That's what I want to talk to you about today. The video will be in 3 parts. First, I will give you some background on the album. Then I will do a track-by-track review of the album. Then I will give you 5 reasons why the album was so successful. First, some background on the album. Self-titled debut was released on April 11, 1980 through EMI Records in the UK and Harvest and Capitol in the US. The North American version included the song Sanctuary, which was released in the UK as a non-album single. The album was a critical and commercial success, peaking at number 4 on the UK albums chart, despite the lackluster production that even the band Iron Maiden have been known to criticize, but I'll talk more about that later. This is the band's only album produced by Will Malone. He's someone who was not really interested in the band, so they practically had to produce most of the album themselves, which, according to bassist Steve Harris, was completed in just 13 days. The recording took place at Kingsway Studio with final mixing at Morgan Studios. They considered replacing Will Malone, but they couldn't find anyone at the time, so they kept him. But in the end, the band didn't like the production quality. But despite this, many fans still preferred the raw quality of the sound recording. This was also the only studio album with the guitarist Dennis Stratton, who was brought in as a last-minute replacement, but then dismissed due to musical differences. This was after the band's European tour in support of Kiss. The album was eventually released on April 11, 1980. It's celebrating its 45th anniversary. I want to talk about the songs now. The UK version didn't have the track Sanctuary, so I'll give you my thoughts on that as the last song. The lineup included Paul Di'Anno on lead vocals, Dave Murray on guitar, Dennis Stratton on guitar and backing vocals, Steve Harris on bass and backing vocals, and Clive Burr on drums. The album opens with Prowler. This is one of my favorite songs because I really like the opening guitar riff. Other than that, it's just a really cool rock song. It has these raspy vocals of Paul Di'Anno and the galloping guitar sound. There's also a cool breakdown in the middle where everything gets quiet and it goes into that guitar part, which leads to the next section that almost sounds like prog rock. This made me think of the band Rush for some reason, and because of that, the song just speeds up in the second half. After this is Remember Tomorrow, and this is a really trippy and psychedelic song. It has Paul Di'Anno singing in a softer style, and there are all these cool sounds in the background. This band has never been known for doing power ballads. I mean, they've done a few, but this is probably their best one. It's just so epic, the way it builds up, it gets heavy and then light again. The song also has a really cool tempo change that comes in right before the guitar solo. Metallica has a really good cover of this that was a bonus track from their Hardwired album. After this is Running Free. I didn't mention this before, but when this album came out, they were compared to a punk band, something that Steve Harris didn't like. And I think one of the reasons was that the song Running Free kind of sounded like a punk rock song, with its bass guitar intro and the drum beat and the raw, rebellious nature of the song. But I think it would be one of the only tracks that sounded like punk, as the other songs were much different. Next is Phantom of the Opera. This is one of the most iconic songs that's ever been. The song has even been compared to progressive rock over the years with its intricate nature and many changes throughout the song. This is one of my favorites. The band Ghost did a really good cover of this song on their Phantomime EP that was released, I believe it was last year. This is also a 7-minute long song, which is another reason that it often gets called a prog song. My favorite part of the song was in at about 3.5 minutes when Steve Harris plays his iconic bass guitar melody that bridges the first and second parts of the song. After this is an instrumental called Transylvania. The band isn't really known for their instrumentals, but they've done a few of them on their early albums. It's a pretty cool heavy metal song with some cool guitar leads. This was later covered by Iced Earth on their album Horror Show. Next is Strange World. This one is one of those songs that often gets overlooked. I don't really hear people talk much about it. It's another one of those atmospheric and trippy songs that has some cool bass guitar playing by Steve Harris. To me, it actually sounds like a Pink Floyd type of song, but it has some guitar playing that's reminiscent of what they would be doing later on. It's another one of those ballads and sounds more like a classic rock song, but I really like it a lot. The song was played only a few times live in the Paul Di'Anno days, but never afterwards, as far as I know. Then there was Charlotte the Harlot. This is the only song that's been credited to Dave Murray alone, and the first of 4 Iron Maiden tracks about a fictional prostitute named Charlotte, although Dave Murray states it was based on a true story, and I'm sure he knows. But another one of their songs that's a little bit of a punk rock sound, in my opinion. It has a very raw sound. It's also a classic, and it's one of the more energetic songs. It also has a softer section during the breakdown that's pretty cool. The final song is Iron Maiden. In other words, a self-titled song on a self-titled album. One of the few bands who have done this, as only Black Sabbath comes to mind. The song has been played at every show since the release of the album, and it's a song where Eddie comes out on stage. I like the song a lot. It's very representative of the band's early sound. It has cool guitar riffs, some awesome bass guitar by Steve Harris. Paul Di'Anno has some really awesome raspy vocals on the song as well. In other words, it's one of the band's most important songs that they have ever written. Before I forget, let me mention the track Sanctuary, which was on the North American version. This was a cool song. I liked that it had a hard-driving guitar riff and the overall catchy nature of the song. It's another song that's been played live over the years with the other vocalists. Real quick, before I continue, if you want to become a member of this channel for only 99 cents, you get early access to my reviews, and for $2.99, not only you get early access, but you can also request album reviews. There's a join button below, or a link in the video description. Now I want to give you 5 reasons why the debut album by Iron Maiden was so successful. Number 1 was the build-up before the release. So before the release of this debut, Iron Maiden was already creating some buzz. They had been playing London's pub circuit for years, night after night, and building a loyal army of fans. So don't believe for a second that they didn't really pay their dues. In 1979, they were able to scrap together enough cash to release the Soundhouse Tapes EP. Only 5,000 copies were pressed, but they sold out very fast and became instant collector's items. The band sent a copy to DJ Neil Kay, who played their demos at this club called the Bandwagon Soundhouse. In other words, the band owes a lot to this guy for their success. They landed coverage in Sounds magazine, where they were hyped as the next big thing in a new wave of British metal. Number 2 is their distinctive sound. In the beginning of the video, I posed a question: what made Iron Maiden different from every other metal band out there? First of all, the songs were way more complex than what other new wave of British heavy metal bands were doing. For example, Phantom of the Opera sounded more like progressive rock with all its time signature changes and instrumental sections. Steve Harris's bass playing was really revolutionary. He was playing bass as a lead instrument with those galloping rhythms. Nobody was really doing that in metal at the time, and not only that, but they really nailed the balance between heaviness and melody. Songs like Remember Tomorrow start quiet and get atmospheric before exploding into heaviness. And this could possibly be an early example of the power ballad in the 80s. Not only that, but their harmonized twin guitar attack was already more advanced than what most bands were doing. In terms of song lyrics, they did the complete opposite of what other bands were doing. They didn't write songs about the usual sex, drugs, and rock and roll lifestyle. Iron Maiden was writing about historical ballads, mythology, and horror stories, and that was way more interesting. Number 3 is the production. This point might be a little controversial, but stay with me for a minute. Will Malone's production wasn't exactly what the band wanted. It sounded thinner and more compressed than what they sounded like when they were playing their live shows. This was something that really annoyed Steve Harris, but that cleaner production actually helped songs like Running Free, and that got them radio play, which exposed them to more mainstream audiences. Even with the compromises, the energy of tracks like Prowler and Iron Maiden still came through, and Paul Di'Anno's aggressive vocals matched perfectly with those songs. They recorded the whole thing in just 13 days on a tiny budget, and that gave them this raw, urgent feel that matched the DIY spirit of the new wave of British heavy metal movement. In the end, the raw production ended up helping the band because it was polished enough for radio but raw enough for the underground metal scene. Number 4 was their visual identity. Iron Maiden's visual identity was a big part of their success. The introduction of Eddie on the album really gave them something that no other band had: a mascot that was as recognizable as their music. Derek Riggs created this zombie-like monster that was perfectly captured the intensity of their sound. As a result, Eddie showed up on t-shirts, posters, and he became part of their live shows. He helped turn Iron Maiden into more than just a band. They became the whole experience. Not only that, but the artwork connected perfectly with metal fans' love of horror movies and those types of things. Remember, this was before MTV and the internet. Album covers were very important, and Iron Maiden's stood out dramatically on the record store shelves. You couldn't really walk past it without wanting to pick one up. Number 5 is the critics. You might not have thought of this one, but the critics played a big role in Maiden's rise. The album got mostly positive reviews in the British metal press. Critics praised their technical skills and songwriting. Kerrang! Magazine gave them lots of coverage, and that helped them gain credibility among metalheads. But despite this, mainstream publications were more divided. Some dismissed them as a trend, while others saw their potential, even if they weren't fully on board with the sound. They were also compared to some established bands like UFO and Deep Purple, and that helped potential fans understand what Iron Maiden was all about. All those reviews kept them in the spotlight, and it built anticipation for follow-up albums, which included Killers and Number of the Beast. If you're interested in more Iron Maiden content, there's a playlist of all of my Iron Maiden videos that I've done over the years. I probably reviewed like almost every album. You can check it out right here. In the meantime, thanks for watching. Please give the video a like. It helps me with the YouTube algorithm. Please subscribe if you're not already. I do rock and metal reviews, rankings, and more. Thanks for watching. I will see you in the next one.